was there that he began his first lies, saying that he had magical powers. Those powers included being able to make it rain, see someone's past, present, and future lives, and communicate with the other side. And surprisingly, his partners bought that story. He began his cult while he was moving, so some of these women and their kids would follow him from place to place, making it quite difficult to track the group. Eventually, he renamed himself as Lou Castro, which made him basically undetectable to the law. While the women in his group started off as sexual partners, some of the women actually met their future husbands during this nomadic move, and those husbands would later join them and follow Lou Castro and his magical powers. So why would the group, seemingly educated individuals, follow a man who claimed to have magical powers? Well, actually, his cult was motivated by greed as well. Lou Castro would operate by the accidental deaths of his followers and then claiming life insurance from the deaths. This would allow for the group to remain quite wealthy. And when they died, obviously the group would benefit from that, ranging from $1 million to $750,000. It was quite lucrative for the group. One of the couples, Jim and Mona, that were in the group, suddenly had a tragedy strike them. They apparently rented or flew a plane, and the plane crashed, killing both of them. And Castro and another woman in the group repeatedly visited the life insurance company in order to receive the payout. And you will find that these accidental deaths and these life insurance payouts become a little bit too common to be a coincidence. Castro expanded his lies about how he had magical powers, and he made the group believe that he was well over 100 years, and that his body was often inhabited by 3 angels. The angels' names are Arthur, Daniel, and Amber, who was the angel of death. And one woman would really rise to influence the group, and her name is Patricia Hughes, and we will talk about her today. So she would also work to tell the group that Castro was the real deal, and she fully believed what he was saying. Now, if that's not already strange enough, Castro began to expand his lies and say that, quote, he needed to have sex with children or he would die. So, the group that believed his medical powers also had children, young girls in the group. was at Angel's Landing that Lou Castro's abuse became much worse. Much worse for the girls. One of the children, who is now an adult, said about her time, quote, "I was 10 when my childhood was over, while other 13-year-olds are getting boyfriends and holding hands. I was holding on to my secret and losing the people I loved one by one. When other 16-year-olds were experiencing the freedom of learning to drive and planning parties, I was planning my own death every day when I drove to school." And the girls in the compound were aged 8 to 16 years old. So Lou Castro would tell his followers that you may die, but I will bring you back, and not fear death. So the woman named Patricia Hughes, which is actually a very famous case in this story, her husband Brian, conveniently for Castro, died in a freak accident at the auto body shop in 2006. He had become depressed and was talking to Lou Castro more often. Castro was telling him, "One day you'll get your chance to go to the other side." Lou Castro would have many accidental deaths around his compound, but he is most infamous for the death of Patricia Hughes. So, one night, Daniel Perez calls over one of the girls, and he says, "Please go into the office and watch this younger child. I'm going to talk to Patricia." So the young child does what he asks. Suddenly, it is reported that Patricia Hughes lost her life in the swimming pool. When 911 investigated and looked into the matter, the witness who had called 911 said that her newborn child had fallen in the pool, and Patricia, like a good mother, had jumped in to rescue her, but drowned. To the other cult members, Daniel Perez, or Lou Castro, had claimed that he foresaw Patricia's death. In fact, he had told Patricia of her death, but being a loyal follower, Patricia simply kissed her daughter goodbye and said that she would return from the dead. But he had sent the 11-year-old to wait in the she had passed away. Perez had been able to evade arrest for previous crimes, and however, that one witness's